disease, soil, drought. Each season bringing new challenges farmers hope they won't face. Agriculture reporter Marcia Gorel follows the successes and failures of Saline County crops. She and University of Missouri Extension agronomist Wayne Crook will look at what's stunting local growth, what nudges farmers closer to productive harvest, and the science behind mid-Missouri fields.
Welcome to Crop Concerns for Video. We haven't been having any for a while because Wayne Crook, our University of Missouri Extension agronomist, has been under the weather, but it's glad to have you back.
Glad
Wayne?
to be back, too.
Oh, good. Glad to be seen, huh?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we are sponsored, as you know, by Central Missouri Agri-Service, and as we start to talk about Central Missouri Agri-Service, we can't help but talk about corn. So it's early March or late March, it's almost April, and I know that some farmers were anxious a couple weeks ago, and I know some people have planted corn. Has that happened here in Saline County?
There's been a few go out to try their planter to make sure it's working. One guy I know planted 15 acres just to make sure that when it got dry enough to go, he would go.
Right.
Down around Lamont, I know some people have 200 or 300 acres in down there. And there's 2 or 3 farmers that said they got their sweet corn in and they're happy with that right now.
Okay. Well, we had rain last night, and that's kind of slowed some people down, but I know people want to start the first week of April if they can. So what are the risks of early corn planting? Is that going to be a problem if they plant the first week of April, or is it just March planting that might be risky?
The first part of middle of March was a real risk because you can always get frost anytime. We can still get a frost in April, but it's very unlikely. Corn planted after the 1st of April should be in pretty good shape, especially by the time it dries up now. They should be able to run good. Corn growth is based on heat units, and if it had been planted earlier, it would have come up, but it would have grown slow. And they've got some research data out of the University of Illinois that shows there is no real advantage to plant before the 5th to the 10th of April. And actually you can still get close to 100% yield planting up until the end of April. And then,
really?
And then the yield really starts to drop off by the end of May. 1st of May. The thing is, this is assuming an average year. I don't think we've ever had an average year in Missouri.
No, or a normal year.
Yeah, but on the average, that is the way it works. Really, any time in April, you should get close to your maximum yield.
Okay. Well, what happens if it snows? Some people think we haven't had enough snow this winter, and we're probably due for another one. What happens if people have their corn up the middle of April, and then it snows or it gets really cold?
The secret to keeping corn alive is if the growing point stays below the soil surface for a long time. As long as the growing point is below the surface of the soil, a frost or snow, either one, may kill the upper leaves and damage them, but as long as it doesn't damage a growing point, it will come along and survive.
Oh, really? Now, where is the growing point? Now,
it's right just above the seed. It'll be, if you plant 2 inches deep, it's probably about an inch in the ground. So the temperature of the soil is going to protect it. And actually, a snow would be the best thing to get because the snow will actually insulate the ground and hold the heat in.
Okay.
A frost would be more of a problem because there's nothing to protect the plant, but the snow over a corn plant can protect it.
Okay. Well, talking about our mild winter, I know that's, a lot of people have said it's really going to increase bug pressure. So what have you seen on that front so far?
We trap for insects. Right now we're trapping for black cutworm. Usually we put out the traps the 1st of April, and we expect to see flights coming in from the south the middle part of April so we can catch the flights. I actually put out traps a week ago Saturday, and I caught 8 that weekend on the black cutworm.
Really?
In Marshall.
In Marshall?
Yeah, Sheridan County we only caught 1. Since then I haven't caught any more, but it shows that the flights of the black cutworm are there, and they're going to be moving in earlier. So they're going to come in, lay eggs. The eggs are going to hatch. So when we plant the corn, the cutworms are going to be larger than normal.
Okay.
And so there's a potential, if the flights keep coming along, we could have more damage on them.
Okay.
The other thing about the warm weather is the insects hatch and come out of the ground based on soil temperature.
Oh,
heat
okay.
units.
Yeah, or heat units, same as corn. Okay.
Yep. So the fact that we're getting this much temperature earlier, we could have a lot more insect problems earlier Maybe not more insects, but they may come in earlier, so we're going to have to be careful and watch for them.
Okay, so you'll be helping keep farmers informed and letting them know if you start to see a big problem. And
Yeah, we've got people all over the state trapping for black cutworm. So if we see a problem in Nevada, Missouri, for example, we'll know that they're probably coming our way, and we can watch for them. There is a website they can go to on the AgEb website where they can see the insect counts,
okay,
and they can be monitored, and that's where we put the data. So if we don't get around to them, they can go to that website and see the insect counts for the whole state anytime.
okay, all right. Well, now you have written some articles since you've been back working. You've written some articles about the weeds and the herbicides that people are using. Can you tell me a little bit about that and some of the concerns there?
One of the concerns was that if people had planted earlier and then put the herbicides on, is that their effectiveness would diminish quicker than it would ordinarily weeks earlier.
Okay.
Also, there were certain herbicides applied in the fall to help control weeds in the spring. And the fact that we've had this warm weather, those herbicides will deteriorate quicker with the warm weather than they would cool weather. So they may not get as much help out of them as they expected.
Okay.
And then also I've seen, since farmers have this high-priced corn, and they're trying to protect it any way they can, even though they're buying seed with insect protection on it,
Right.
some of them are still applying insecticides to the ground for $4 an acre. It's really cheap insurance for them
Right.
with the price of corn. And some are going back to using organophosphates. Well, I saw an article the other day where organophosphates can interact with ALS herbicides and HPPD herbicides.
Okay.
And under the right conditions, they have seen as much as a 50 bushel yield loss when these two things interact.
Is that right?
And the worst thing, the organophosphate, the more systemically it is and the faster it's taken up, the bigger the chance there is for interaction.
Okay.
But there are plenty of herbicide selections out there, and there's other insecticide selections. They just need to make sure they don't mix the wrong ones together.
Okay. All right. Well, another thing we've talked about is the loss of nitrogen. I know it's been warm all winter. I mean, we really haven't had winter. So what do farmers need to look for there?
Most of the nitrogen put on the fall, the farmers put on
Inserve.
Inserve, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that'll help protect it. And actually, one of the things that's helping preserve our nitrogen they put on last fall is the dry weather we had.
Really?
Because when it turns wet and they go to anaerobic conditions in the soil, the bacteria is more likely to convert the ammonium form to nitrate, which can be lost. And then also when you have heavy rains, the water moving through the soil can wash the nitrates on down through the soil.
Right.
But as dry as it's been, we haven't had enough to wash the nitrates out that are there.
Okay.
And then also with the dry weather we've had this spring, with the evapotranspiration we're getting, the movement of the evapotranspiration causes the water to move up through the soil.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually pulling the nitrates up instead of letting them go down into the subsoil.
Okay.
So basically right now we've probably got as good a nitrogen supply in the soil as possible.
Okay.
There might be a 10 or 15% loss, which is normal.
Okay.
The biggest worry we have is we get a lot of heavy rain now and it washes it out, or with the warmer conditions we get more conversion to nitrates, which can be lost easier. So our main problem is from what happens now, not what has happened in the past.
And do you have a crystal ball so you know what's going to happen?
If I did, I wouldn't have to do this job.
Okay. Well, we've also talked about. I know you've also talked about if people do need to replant corn, and let's hope we don't have to. Let's hope everybody gets planted in the next couple of weeks and it comes up and everything's perfect and we have a
Right.
perfect year. But just in case, you had written about some of the seed supply being short. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
I think overall there is adequate seed. The problem is going to be getting seed of the newer hybrids and the newer genetics who's out there. Even in Iowa this last year they had some production problems on seed corn, and a lot of the companies went to South America to produce seed, but they were assuming we'd have a normal planting date so early. And so some of the seed may not be here yet.
I see.
And that's the main problem right there. There's seed they can find out there. It may not be the hybrids they want if they have to replant. If they want the good hybrids and we get normal planting and they have to replant, they should be available by then. But supply is there, It's just which hybrid you can get is the biggest question.
Okay.
And if you're worried about getting just the hybrid you want, that might be a good reason to wait, especially on fields that are questionable. They're wet, they're cold, planting conditions aren't just right. You might want to wait on those till conditions improve.
Well, now, if I remember April, usually the planting conditions will be right, and the next week they'll be wrong. So it's hard to tell. And then the next week they'll be right, and the next week they'll be wrong.
I'd say more the next day.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Wayne. It's glad to have you back. And I want to thank Sarah Reed, our videographer. And also thank you to Central Missouri Agri-Service for sponsoring this other edition of Crop Concerns for Video. Thank you.